Being a filmmaker has really been my dream for as long as I can remember. I honestly can't remember ever really wanting to do anything else. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Star Wars for the first time, and it was amazing. It was one of those things that'll just stick with me forever. It just absolutely blew my mind. The space battles, the lightsabers, this entire other world was just amazing to me. And I just remember feeling like that's what I want to do. That's it. It was the process of making it. I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to know everything about the world that George Lucas had created. I wanted to know how they did the special effects. How did the land speeders move, and how did they make them look like they were hovering? How did they create these epic space scenes with the battles and the Millennium Falcon and just every single bit of it. I studied the set. I tried to understand where everything was. The process was interesting to me. Life doesn't always work out the way you plan it. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, and that was great. I loved it. I learned a lot. Became a lot of the person I am today in the Marines. But at the end, I got out, and as I was telling everyone goodbye, and they said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, it's back to plan A. I got to figure out how to be a filmmaker." So that was about 16 years ago. I feel like I've always been a storyteller. I've always felt that connection with being able to convey a story and convey a feeling or an emotion, or transport somebody someplace else, someplace other than where they are. And I think that's what storytelling is about. So this series is really my attempt to document my journey. There's lots of great guys on YouTube putting out tons of amazing content, helping you learn how to be a filmmaker. And I am taking full advantage. Thank you very much to all those people. Please keep posting stuff, because I'm definitely using it. And it's helping me to really grow my skills. So I figured I would post my journey as I'm trying to learn how to be a filmmaker really from the ground up. You're catching me at a point where I know very little. So the skill that I'm working on right now is lighting. So the goal for today is to, somewhere in this room, set up a interview scene. I'm working on lighting skills, so I'm going for a more dramatic, cinematic kind of lighting look, because that's kind of the skill I've been studying, so we'll see how it goes. It's an art form all its own, and it's really a tough skill to master, because light kind of does whatever the heck it wants to do. It just bounces off of everything. It'll fill an entire room, and it can be really tough to control and master. But you see some of the great filmmakers who really master putting the light exactly where they want, in exactly the color they want, and exactly the temperature they want, and it bounces back to the camera and gives you just this beautiful image. And you always wonder, how did they do that? Or at least I do. I wonder how they do that. So, here I am, trying to figure it out. I'm 41 years old, probably a little bit late to be starting back in this game and deciding it's all of a sudden time to be serious. But you know what? I started my 40s out with a bang. My wife and I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro shortly after our 40th birthdays, so feeling pretty invincible, like we can do just about anything. So 2 key concepts that I'm working on here, that I'm trying to get down, is have a shallower depth of field so that I can really bring my subject out of the background a little bit and add some dimensionality to the shot. And then lighting sort of 2 different spaces. One, I want to light the space that the subject is in, so that the subject can really come out. From the study that I've done, there's 3 major lights that we're looking for: a key light to light the face, a fill light to sort of fill in the shadow side of the face, and then a backlight to give that nice little rim, around the hair and maybe the shoulders, just again to create some separation from the background. I want to create some depth in the background by lighting the background in an interesting way that looks and feels natural to the scene. So my first attempt at this was not fantastic. I actually ended up being a little bit out of focus. So it looks like the background was more in focus than I was, and plus lots of parts of the image are overexposed. So not my best work there, but it was a place to start. So that was my starting place. I was in the probably early in the day. I think it was 10, 11 o'clock a.m., something like that. A lot of light coming in the window. You'll see off to the left of the screen, there's a window there. And I also feel like that lamp in the background, it's very warm. So I'm kind of working with that, trying to figure out how to get that to look a little bit better. All right, so here's my next attempt. I managed to get myself in focus, and then you can see, it's a little tough to tell, but if you look at the clock on the wall, you can see that I was able to get the clock on the wall out of focus now. So I think I've achieved some of the depth of field where my face is now in focus, and I've created some separation. I've got that key light still off about 90 degrees. The backlight, I think I moved back just a little bit to try and catch a little more of the hair. Might have caught a little bit more of that. And then for fill, I'm using one of the big bounce boards. So I'm just bouncing light off of there just to fill the shadowed side of my face on the right of the screen. This looks a little bit better, but I still feel like it's too bright in the background. And so I'm really trying to kind of figure out how to adjust and figure out how to make it a little less bright in the background. So I took another stab at it, and I changed my angle a little bit, and I moved the position of the lights. So I actually moved the lights back, and thinking maybe if I moved them back a little bit, I would get a little bit less light spilling over, all over the place. And depth of field, I still managed to control that. I've got good focus on the subject. The lights are at about the same angles, just farther back. I kind of like the backlight on this one a little more. I feel like you get a nice little thinner line down the neck and off the shoulders and arms, and it creates a really nice separation from the back. But the image is still just overall, I think, overexposed, too bright. I think my fill light is just too bright. The key light might even be just a hair overexposed. And I was playing in this process a lot with the f-stops. I was adjusting my ISO to bringing the ISO up, and the f-stops, I was even bringing those up a little bit, sacrificing a little bit of the depth of field, just so that I could try to control the light a little bit more. And what I finally came to is this just isn't working. I'm not, it's just too bright in here. There's too much light spilling over from all over the place. So I took another stab at it, just turning that light off in the background. So you can see I just turned the lamp off. And it's a little bit of a bummer. I feel like it made the whole background look a little bit flatter. It did take away some of the warmth. The room was just looking really, really warm because of that nice orange light. So it took away a little bit of that, which honestly I think maybe helps the image a little bit. It's going to allow me to do a little bit more with this image. And I think that the other light positions are still looking pretty good, but I'm still a little bit overexposed, and it's very, very bright. So what I decided to do at this point is wait till nighttime, because there was a lot of light, just ambient light coming in the windows. Even though I'd closed the shutters, there was just a ton of light coming in. So I thought maybe that's the next step, is just close those windows and then see what it looks like. So here's my final product, and I definitely think it looks a little bit better. Overall, I was able to maintain some of my depth of field. You can see that the subject's in focus, but by the clock on the wall, you can definitely see that's a little bit out of focus. I had to leave that lamp off in the background, which bummed me out a little bit. because I really felt like that was creating a nice sort of interesting but not overpowering glow in the room, but it was too much. There was just too much light. So what I did, if you look over on the right side against the wall, I threw up some obstructions in front of the light. Just a little strip of neutral density filter, and then I just put some tape on it just to kind of break it up so you can see it broken up a little bit. I probably could have gone a little farther with that, down lower, but up higher you can see the light, and you got kind of some interesting rays coming in there. And so I feel like that made the background a little bit better. And then on just to the right of the clock, you see a little dot there. There's just a tiny little LED light I threw on the wall just to create something there to make it look a little less completely flat. So overall, I think this image came out looking pretty good. So I feel like I've come a long way in this. Some of the problems with it are obviously the light source on the wall, the back wall, coming from that right side. Since that was the dark side of my face, I was trying to light up that side of the wall, but the direction the light was coming from really didn't make sense because there's clearly a window on the left side of the screen. So I tried to get the light coming from that side, and I just wasn't having any luck with that. So I finally just gave up and said, okay, we're going to pretend there's a window on the other side of the room, and that's just where the light's coming from. But then it doesn't really make sense with the dark side of my face. So, there's some problems with that. It makes it just a little bit less believable. And you also see just to the left of the lamp in the background, you see that the double shadow, which looks really ugly. That's just not a good look. So that's something I'd want to try and take care of in the future. I think one of the next steps that I'll take is trying to figure out how to shape the light a little more. And I think that's going to give me a lot more control. Trying to use things like barn doors and flags so I can kind of have less light spill all over the room and maybe be able to shoot during the day. The second key thing I'm going to do is I'm going to order some lens filters. Particularly ND filters. I think some ND filters will give me a little bit more control where I can keep my aperture nice and open, maintaining a little bit of control over the depth of field. I think that's really critical to creating some separation and being able to focus on the audience on your subject. I think that's going to give me a much nicer image. So the first video that I shot was actually for a 48-hour film challenge. I had a ton of fun doing it. And this is where I really started to learn my own limitations as a filmmaker. I didn't really understand the camera. I didn't really understand shot composition. I was kind of just setting stuff up and going for it. I had a story to tell, and I was trying to just sort of extract the story out of the camera through brute force. It was horrible. It actually ended up being so bad I didn't submit it to the contest because the end product was pretty rough, but I posted it online anyway, so you're welcome to go see it. But what I also did in that same week is after I got some Adobe editing software, I started to see just the power of that and how much you could really push your images and push your storytelling by just being able to edit it properly, color grade it properly. And man, did that awaken something inside of me. I'm having like this creative explosion right now that's really exciting and fun. And I'm learning how to start to put these tools together. And I think the lighting is really the next kind of logical step in that. It's a really exciting place to be, to feel like the limiting factor is actually your imagination. Because the tools you haven't even scratched the surface of. I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm Eric Ryan, and I want to be a filmmaker. Be on the lookout for another episode, and I'll just keep trying to kind of document my journey here. Hopefully you find it interesting, and if you have any suggestions on the stuff I'm working on, I would love to hear them. Please throw some comments in and let me know what you guys do to solve some of these problems.